Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë is a story of intense passion, revenge, and the destructiveness of love, set against the wild Yorkshire moors. Its central characters, Heathcliff and Catherine Earnshaw, share a love so powerful it transcends life, death, and morality. Yet it ultimately becomes their undoing. Here's a condensed summary of this classic Gothic tale. The story unfolds through a series of narrators, beginning with Mr. Lockwood, a new tenant at Thrushcross Grange, who becomes curious about his mysterious, brooding landlord, Heathcliff, who lives at Wuthering Heights. After a disturbing night spent there, he asks the housekeeper, Nelly Dean, to tell him the history of its residents, and Nelly begins to recount the tale. Years earlier, Wuthering Heights was the home of the Earnshaw family. Mr. Earnshaw, his son Hindley, and his daughter Catherine. On a trip to Liverpool, Mr. Earnshaw finds an orphaned boy of dark complexion, whom he names Heathcliff. Though Heathcliff's origins are mysterious, Mr. Earnshaw raises him as his own, much to Hindley's resentment, as he feels replaced. Catherine, however, quickly forms a deep bond with Heathcliff, and they become inseparable, running wild across the moors. When Mr. Earnshaw dies, Hindley inherits Wuthering Heights and demotes Heathcliff to the status of a servant. Despite Hindley's cruelty, the bond between Heathcliff and Catherine remains strong. Catherine, however, grows close to the genteel Linton family at Thrushcross Grange, especially to Edgar Linton, a refined and wealthy young man. Edgar represents stability and social respectability, a stark contrast to the fierce passion she shares with Heathcliff. Eventually, Catherine decides to marry Edgar, a decision she explains to Nelly, saying it would be degrading to marry Heathcliff despite her deep love for him. Heathcliff overhears only part of this conversation and, heartbroken, leaves Wuthering Heights. 3 years later, Heathcliff returns, mysteriously wealthy and intent on revenge. He finds Hindley in a drunken, ruined state, and exploits his weakness to take control of Wuthering Heights. Meanwhile, Heathcliff's presence rekindles his toxic and passionate bond with Catherine, unsettling her peaceful life with Edgar. In a manipulative move, Heathcliff begins a relationship with Edgar's sister, Isabella, hoping to hurt Edgar and gain leverage over both families. He marries Isabella, but treats her cruelly, using her as a pawn in his vengeful schemes. As tensions between Edgar and Heathcliff intensify, Catherine's health deteriorates. She is torn between her marriage to Edgar and her undying love for Heathcliff, leading her into a feverish breakdown. In a final, passionate confrontation with Heathcliff, they both acknowledge the destructive intensity of their connection. Shortly afterward, Catherine dies, but not before giving birth to a daughter, Cathy. Heathcliff is devastated, cursing her spirit to haunt him forever, unable to bear the idea of being separated from her. Following Catherine's death, Heathcliff's need for vengeance only deepens. He raises Hareton, Hindley's son, in ignorance and servitude, subjecting him to the same mistreatment Hindley had once inflicted on him. Years pass, and young Cathy grows up at Thrushcross Grange, sheltered but curious about her family history. When she finally meets her cousin, Linton, Heathcliff's sickly son by Isabella, she is charmed by his sensitivity. However, Heathcliff manipulates Cathy into a relationship with Linton, hoping to gain control of Thrushcross Grange by securing Cathy's inheritance through marriage. Tragically, Cathy is forced to marry Linton, who soon dies, leaving Heathcliff in control of both Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. His revenge is nearly complete, but as the years pass, Heathcliff finds himself haunted by memories of Catherine. Obsessed with her spirit, he begins to lose interest in his revenge, his bitterness fading into a yearning for death. hoping to reunite with her in the afterlife. In his final days, Heathcliff stops eating, consumed by his obsession with Catherine's ghost. He is eventually found dead in her old room, his face showing a strange peace, as though he has finally joined her in death. With Heathcliff gone, Cathy and Hareton, who have grown close despite Heathcliff's efforts to keep them apart, inherit the two estates. They plan to marry and leave Wuthering Heights for Thrushcross Grange, ending the bitter cycle of vengeance and destruction that Heathcliff's arrival had set in motion years before. Wuthering Heights is a tale of unrestrained passion, revenge, and the consequences of love that cannot be confined to societal norms or even the bounds of life and death. The novel's exploration of obsession, isolation, and unresolved emotions makes it one of the most haunting stories in English literature, capturing the wildness of both the Yorkshire moors and the human heart.